The year was 2347. Humans had been fighting the Vethrak Dominion for almost 30 years. The Vethrak were tall reptile creatures with yellow eyes and sharp teeth. They believed that all warm-blooded creatures were weak and deserved to be slaves or killed. Commander Lavra Bennett stood on the bridge of her ship, the medical frigate called Mercy's Light. The ship was floating through a dangerous area of space, known as the Korath Sector. Her vessel carried no real weapons. It was a hospital ship, marked with bright symbols that told everyone it was not a combat vessel. The ship was carrying wounded soldiers and refugees away from the war zone. Lavra was a woman of 42 years with short brown hair and tired eyes. She had served in the medical corps for 18 years. She had seen terrible things in that time, but she believed in her work. She believed that saving lives was more important than taking them. "Commander, I am seeing multiple contacts on sensors," said Lieutenant Kevin Shaw from his station. His voice was shaking with fear. "They just came out of hyperspace." Lavra walked to the main display screen. Her heart dropped when she saw what was there. 12 Vethrak warships had appeared all around them. They were completely surrounded. There was no way to escape. "This is Commander Bennett of the medical frigate Mercy's Light," she said into the communication system. "We are a non-combat vessel. We are protected under the Orion Accords. We carry only wounded people and medical staff. Please respond." The answer came back in the ugly clicking sounds of the Vethrak language. The computer translated it into human words. "Human vessel, you will surrender now. If you resist, everyone aboard will die." Lavra looked around at her crew. There were 87 people working on her ship. Most of them were women who had chosen to serve in the medical corps. Below decks, there were 312 patients. Many of them were too hurt to even stand up. They could not fight. They could not run. She had no choice. "All hands, this is the commander speaking," Lavra said. Her voice broke a little as she gave the order. "Stand down. Do not resist. I repeat, do not resist." The Vethrak boarding parties arrived 1 hour later. Their shuttles attached to the Mercy's Light like parasites. The airlock doors opened, and the alien soldiers poured in. Lavra had seen Vethrak before, but only in pictures and videos. Seeing them in person was different. They were over 7 feet tall, covered in green and brown scales. Their yellow eyes had no warmth in them at all. Their mouths were filled with teeth that looked like small knives. The leader of the boarding party was a commander with red markings painted across his face. These markings showed his rank and his many kills. He looked at the humans the way a person might look at insects. "Separate them," he ordered his soldiers. "Put the males in the cargo hold. Put the females in the forward compartments." Lavra stepped forward. Under the Orion Accords, prisoners of war must be kept together. They must be treated with basic respect. "You cannot separate us based on..." The Vethrak commander hit her across the face with the back of his clawed hand. The blow sent her falling to the floor. Blood ran from a cut on her cheek. "Your accords mean nothing to us, mammal," he said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "You are prey. Nothing more than prey." The Vethrak soldiers grabbed the crew members and began dragging them away. Lavra caught the eye of her chief medical officer, Dr. Hannah Cole. Hannah was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had been like a mother to many of the younger staff. Now her face was pale with fear, but she kept her composure. They both understood what this separation probably meant, but neither of them could say it out loud. The male crew members and male patients were pushed and shoved into the cargo bay. The space was cold and dark. The Vethrak threw them inside and then sealed the door. Private First Class Daniel Torres pressed his ear against the metal wall. He was only 19 years old. He had finished his basic training just 1 year ago. This was supposed to be a safe assignment. Medical ships did not see combat. That was what everyone had told him. Now he could hear the sounds of people being moved on the other side of the wall. He could hear women crying. He could hear the heavy footsteps of Vethrek soldiers. Then there was silence. What are they going to do to them? Daniel asked. His voice was small and scared. Corporal Pete Adams sat against the wall nearby. He was a veteran soldier who had served for 12 years. He had lost his right leg in a battle at a place called Helios Prime. Now he had a metal leg that hummed quietly. When he moved, Pete did not answer Daniel's question. None of the men in the cargo bay answered it. They all knew what might be happening. They all feared the worst. But speaking those fears out loud would make them too real. An old sergeant named Bill Murphy started to pray quietly in the corner. Some of the other men joined him. Others just sat in silence, staring at the walls. Daniel closed his eyes and thought about his mother back on Earth. She had cried when he left for his assignment. She had made him promise to stay safe. He had laughed and told her that medical ships never saw any danger. He wondered if he would ever see her again. Hours passed. The cargo bay grew colder. The Vethrak did not bring them food or water. They did not explain what was happening. They simply left the human males locked in darkness. Sometime during the night, Daniel heard a sound that would stay with him forever. It was distant and muffled by the thick walls of the ship. But there was no mistaking what it was. It was screaming. Women screaming. Daniel covered his ears with his hands, but he could not block out the sound. Beside him, Pete Adams sat perfectly still. His face showed no expression at all, but his hands were clenched into fists so tight that his knuckles turned white. The screaming went on for a long time. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Daniel did not sleep that night. None of them did. They sat in the cold darkness of the cargo bay and waited. They did not know what would happen next. They only knew that something terrible had occurred on the other side of that wall, and they were powerless to stop it. The first day became the second day. The second day became the third. The Vethrak brought them small amounts of food and water, just enough to keep them alive. But they told them nothing about the women. Daniel tried to ask questions. A Vethrak guard hit him in the stomach with the butt of a weapon. He fell to the ground, gasping for air. "Do not speak unless spoken to, mammal," the guard said. After that, Daniel stopped asking questions. On the fourth day, the cargo bay doors finally opened again. On the fourth day, the cargo bay doors opened with a loud grinding sound. Light poured in, making the prisoners cover their eyes. They had been in darkness for so long that the brightness hurt. A group of Vethrak guards walked in. Their heavy boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. The red-marked commander was with them. His mouth was twisted into something that looked like a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Only cruelty. Daniel Torres pushed himself up from the floor. His body ached from sleeping on hard metal. His stomach was empty, and his throat was dry. But when he saw the expression on the Vethrak commander's face, he forgot about all of that. Something was very wrong. "Humans," the commander announced. His voice was loud and proud. "Your females have served their purpose. They were weak, as all your kind are weak." He paused and looked around at the human males. He seemed to be enjoying their fear, but they screamed beautifully. He finished. Daniel felt his blood turn cold. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. He could not breathe. He could not think. Beside him, Pete Adams surged forward. The veteran soldier moved fast, even with his metal leg. He tried to reach the Vethrak commander, his hands reaching for the alien's throat. The guards beat him back with their weapons. Pete fell to the ground, blood running from a cut on his head. But he did not cry out. He simply looked up at the commander with eyes full of hate. "You want to know what we did to them?" The commander continued. He was clearly enjoying this moment. We made them an example, a message to all humans about what happens to those who resist the Dominion. He gestured to one of his soldiers. The soldier activated a small device, and a holographic display appeared in the air above them. The images that appeared were burned into Daniel's mind forever. The display showed the forward compartments of the ship. The walls were covered in blood. Bodies lay everywhere, twisted and broken. Women who had been alive just days ago were now dead. And the way they had died was not quick or clean. Daniel saw Commander Laura Bennett among the dead. Her brown eyes were open and empty. Dr. Hannah Cole was there too. The kind older woman who had helped so many people was gone forever. Nurses, doctors, medical technicians, even patients who had been too weak to fight back. All of them were dead. The Vethrak had not just killed them. They had made them suffer. "We recorded everything," the commander said. His voice was filled with pride. "We will send these recordings across all of human space. Let your species know that mercy is weakness. Let them know that weakness will be punished." Daniel fell to his knees. His legs could no longer hold him up. Around him, men were crying, screaming, and cursing. Some tried to attack the guards and were beaten down. Others just stared at the horrible images, their minds unable to understand what they were seeing. A young medic named Tommy Hayes was sick on the floor. An older engineer named Frank Cooper had to be held back by 3 of his fellow prisoners as he tried to charge the guards. The cargo bay was filled with sounds of grief and rage, but Pete Adams did not weep. He did not scream. He did not try to attack anyone. He simply looked at the Vethrak commander with eyes that had gone flat and cold. Like a shark. Like something that had stopped feeling anything except the need to destroy. "You made a mistake," Pete said. His voice was quiet and calm. The commander laughed. It was an ugly sound, like bones breaking. "What mistake could I possibly have made, crippled mammal?" "You let some of us live," Pete replied. "You wanted witnesses. People to spread fear. But witnesses can also be messengers. And we will carry a message back to humanity. Not the message you wanted us to carry. A different one." The commander stopped laughing. For just a moment, something flickered in those yellow reptilian eyes. It might have been worry. It might have been fear. It was gone quickly, but Daniel saw it. "You think your species can threaten us?" the commander asked. "You are weak. You are soft. You care too much about your females and your children. This is why you will lose this war." Pete shook his head slowly. "You do not understand humans at all. You think caring about our people makes us weak. You are wrong. It makes us dangerous. More dangerous than you can imagine." The commander snorted with contempt. "Take them to the escape pods. Release them near human space. Let them spread their tales of what they saw here." The Vethrak guards grabbed the human prisoners and began dragging them through the ship. Daniel stumbled along, his mind still filled with the images from the holographic display dot as they passed through a corridor. He saw something that made him stop. There was blood on the wall. Human blood. And written in that blood were words. Someone had used their last moments of life to leave a message. The words said, "Remember us." A guard shoved Daniel forward before he could read anything else. But those 2 words stayed with him. They carved themselves into his heart like letters carved into stone. "Remember us, Dot," he would. He would remember them all. The escape pods were small and cramped. The Vethrak packed as many humans as they could into each one. They gave them no food, no water, and no medical supplies. They simply launched the pods into space and left them to drift. Daniel found himself in a pod with Pete Adams and 6 other survivors. The small space was dark and cold. The only light came from a tiny emergency beacon that blinked red in the corner. "How long until we reach human space?" Someone asked. 3 weeks, Pete replied. "Maybe 4. If the life support holds out." 3 weeks? Daniel did not know if he could survive 3 weeks. Not because of the physical hardship, but because of what was in his head. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the images from the holographic display. He saw Laura Bennett's empty eyes. He saw Dr. Cole's kind face, now still and cold. "What do we do?" Daniel asked. His voice cracked like a child's. Pete was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hard as iron. "We survive. We reach human space. We tell everyone what happened. We show them what the Vethrek did. And then we make sure that every human being in the galaxy knows one simple truth." "What truth?" Daniel asked. Pete looked at him. In the dim red light of the emergency beacon, his eyes seemed to glow. "That this will not go unanswered. That humanity does not forget. That we do not forgive. The Vethrek think they sent a message today. They did, but not the message they intended. They told humanity that there are no rules anymore. They told us that the enemy will do anything, no matter how evil." He paused. "Now we will show them what happens when humans stop holding back. When we stop trying to be civilized. When we decide that an enemy needs to be destroyed completely." Daniel shivered. There was something in Pete's voice that scared him. Something ancient and dark. "The Vethrek have no idea what they have done," Pete continued. "They have awakened something. Something that was sleeping inside our species. Something that we try to keep locked away. What is it?" Daniel whispered. Pete smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Rage," he said. "Pure human rage. The kind that built empires and destroyed them. The kind that survived ice ages and plagues and nuclear fire. The kind that never stops, never forgives, and never forgets." He leaned back against the wall of the escape pod. "The Vethrek wanted to break us. Instead, they have united us. They wanted to make us afraid. Instead, they have made us angry. And an angry humanity is the most dangerous thing in this galaxy." The escape pod drifted through the cold darkness of space. Inside, 47 survivors sat in silence, each one carrying memories of horror and loss. But they also carried something else. They carried a promise. A promise written in blood on a corridor wall. Remember us thought they would remember. And they would make sure the galaxy never forgot. The escape pods drifted through space for 23 days. The survivors ran out of food on day 15. They ran out of water on day 19. By the time the human destroyer found them, several of the men were barely alive. The ship that rescued them was called the Valiant. It was a combat vessel with big guns and thick armor. The crew brought the survivors aboard and immediately gave them food, water, and medical care. Daniel Torres woke up in a hospital bed 3 days later. A nurse was checking his vital signs. She had tears in her eyes. "You are safe now," she said. "You are home." But Daniel did not feel safe. He did not feel like he was home. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the images from the Mercy's light. He saw the blood. He saw the bodies. He heard the screaming. He wondered if he would ever feel safe again. Pete Adams recovered faster. The tough old soldier refused to stay in bed. He demanded to speak with someone in command. He said he had information that needed to reach the highest levels of military leadership. Within a week, both Daniel and Pete were standing in a large office at Fleet Command. The room was filled with important people. Generals, admirals, and government officials. They all wanted to hear what had happened. Admiral Catherine Ross sat at the head of the table. She was a tall woman in her early 60s with gray hair cut short. Her eyes had seen many battles. Her face was lined with years of hard decisions. But when she looked at the survivors, Daniel saw something that surprised him. She looked tired. Not physically tired, but tired in her soul. Like someone who had been fighting for too long. "Tell us everything," she said. Her voice was calm and controlled. Pete Adams told the story from beginning to end. He did not spare any details. He described the capture, the separation, and the massacre. He showed them the recordings that the Vethrak had sent with them. When the holographic display showed the images of the dead women, several people in the room looked away. One general left to be sick. An admiral started to cry quietly. Catherine Ross watched the entire thing without looking away once. Her face showed no expression, but her hands, resting on the table, slowly curled into fists. When it was over, she sat in silence for a long moment. The room was completely quiet. No one dared to speak. "How many survivors?" she finally asked. 47 from the crew and passengers, Pete reported. "All male. Every woman aboard was killed." Catherine closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, but Daniel saw it. "My sister served on that ship," she said quietly. "Dr. Lisa Ross. She was a trauma surgeon." The room became even more silent. No one knew what to say. Catherine opened her eyes, and Daniel saw something in them that made him shiver. It was not just grief. It was not just anger. It was something deeper, something older, something that had been sleeping for a long time and had just woken up. "The Vethrak believe this will break our spirit," she said. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. "They believe that by doing terrible things to our people, they will scare us into giving up." She stood up from her chair. "They've made a very serious mistake. They do not understand our species at all." She turned to face the assembled officers and officials. "I want those recordings sent to every human colony, every space station, every ship in the fleet. I want every human being to see what the Vethrak did to our people." A young aide spoke up nervously. "Admiral, the content is extremely graphic. Some people might think we should not show." "Show them," Catherine interrupted. "Our people deserve to know the truth. They need to see what the enemy is capable of. They need to understand what we are fighting against." The recordings were broadcast across human space within hours. They spread through news channels, social media, and military communications. Within a day, every human in the galaxy had seen what happened on the Mercy's Light. The response was immediate. On Earth, billions of people took to the streets. They did not riot or cause destruction. They simply stood together in silence, holding candles and pictures of the victims. The largest gathering was in New York City, where 5 million people filled every street in Manhattan. On Mars, the Colonial Assembly met in emergency session. They voted unanimously to give all resources to the war effort. Factories that had been making civilian goods started making weapons instead. Mines that had been closed for years were reopened. On Titan, miners who had been on strike for better working conditions returned to their jobs without asking for anything. They said they would discuss their problems after the war was won. Recruitment centers across human space were overwhelmed with volunteers. Men and women of all ages lined up to join the military. Old veterans who had retired came back to serve again. Scientists left their peaceful research to work on weapons. Engineers designed new ships. Factory workers labored day and night. General Marcus Webb addressed a gathering of soldiers at Fort Armstrong on the moon. He was a quiet man who rarely raised his voice. But today his words carried through the entire hall like thunder. "The Vethrak wanted to send us a message," he said. "They wanted to tell us that fighting back is useless. They wanted us to surrender. They used our women, our healers, to make their point." He paused and looked out at the thousands of soldiers before him. But they forgot something about humans. We are a species that once hunted giant animals with nothing but sticks and rocks. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived wars that nearly destroyed our planet. We clawed our way to the stars because we refused to accept defeat. His voice dropped lower. And when you hurt our people, when you target the innocent, when you do things so evil that words cannot describe them, you do not break us. You wake something up. Something that has been sleeping in our blood since before we were truly human. He leaned forward. The Vethrak have awakened humanity's anger. Now they will learn why every other species in this galaxy steps carefully around us. Because when humans decide to make war, we do not stop until the job is finished. And this job will not be finished until the Vethrak Dominion exists only in history books. The hall exploded with cheering. The sound was so loud that it shook the walls. In the weeks that followed, humanity transformed itself into a weapon. Every resource, every effort, every thought was directed toward one goal: victory. Not just winning battles, but ending the Vethrak threat forever. Daniel Torres watched all of this from his hospital room, then from his new assignment aboard a warship. He had been promoted to sergeant and given a position on the assault carrier Thunder's voice. He kept a small chip in his pocket at all times. On it were the names and faces of every woman who had died on the Mercy's Light. 87 names. 87 faces. He read through them every night before he went to sleep. "We are coming," he whispered to the images. "We have not forgotten you. We will never forget you." 6 months after the massacre, Admiral Catherine Ross announced the largest military operation in human history. It was called Operation Burning Sky. 800 warships, 2 million ground soldiers. Weapons that had been considered too powerful to use were brought out of storage. The target was the Vethrak, forward base at Korath Prime, the very system where the Mercy's Light had been. Captured. The war was about to enter a new phase, and the Vethrak would learn that some sleeping giants should never be disturbed. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a hammer falling from the sky. 800 warships appeared in perfect formation around Korath Prime. The Vethrak had never seen anything like it. At the front of the fleet was the newly built dreadnought Retribution. It was the largest warship humanity had ever created. Its guns could destroy a city with a single shot. Its armor could take hits that would tear apart any other ship. Commander Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Retribution. He was a young man, only 32 years old, but his eyes looked much older. His mother had been Dr. Hannah Cole of the Mercy's Light. She had died in the massacre. Nathan had personally asked to command this ship. He had personally asked to lead the attack on Korath Prime. Admiral Ross had granted both requests without question. He kept a small photograph of his mother clipped to his console. In the picture, she was smiling. She had been a kind woman who had spent her life healing people. Now she was gone, murdered by creatures who saw humans as nothing more than prey. "All ships report ready, Commander," said his tactical officer. Nathan nodded. He looked at the Vethrak defensive positions on his display. 12 warships, 20 orbital platforms, ground bases on the planet below. It was a strong defense. It would not be enough. "All ships," Nathan said into the fleet-wide communication channel. "Commence attack." The human fleet opened fire. Hundreds of weapons lit up the darkness of space. Missiles, energy beams, and kinetic rounds tore into the Vethrak positions. The enemy ships tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Human technology had improved rapidly in the 6 months since the massacre. Scientists and engineers had worked without rest to create better weapons, better shields, better engines. The entire species had focused its genius on one goal: making sure the Vethrak could never do something like the Mercy's Light massacre again. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, every Vethrak ship had been destroyed. The orbital platforms were nothing but burning debris. The space around Korath Prime was filled with wreckage, but the planet below was untouched. Admiral Ross had given specific orders about this. "Do not attack civilian targets," she had commanded. "We are not like them. We do not kill innocent people to send the message." This confused the Vethrak. They could not understand it. If they had been in the same position, they would have burned the planet to ash. They would have killed everyone, combatants and civilians alike. But humans were different. Ground forces landed on Korath Prime the next day. 200,000 soldiers, supported by tanks, aircraft, and combat robots. They attacked the military bases with overwhelming force. They captured command centers, weapon depots, and communication stations. Sergeant Daniel Torres was among the troops that landed. He had trained hard for this moment. He had lifted weights until his muscles screamed. He had practiced with weapons until he could hit a target in his sleep. He had studied Vethrak tactics until he knew them better than most Vethrak soldiers did. Now he was here, on the planet where his nightmare had begun. His unit was assigned to capture a bunker complex on the northern continent. Intelligence reports said that a high-ranking Vethrak officer was hiding there. Someone important. Daniel led his squad through the underground tunnels. They moved carefully, checking every corner for traps and enemies. The Vethrak soldiers they encountered fought hard, but the humans fought harder. When they reached the deepest part of the bunker, they found a sealed door. Daniel nodded to his explosives expert, a woman named Sergeant Kelly Morgan. She placed charges on the door and blew it open. Inside was a single Vethrak. He was cowering in the corner, his yellow eyes wide with fear, and on his face were distinctive red markings. Daniel recognized him. Immediately. It was the commander from the Mercy's Light, the one who had ordered the massacre, the one who had shown them the recordings of their murdered friends. The Vethrak recognized Daniel too. His scales went pale with terror. "Wait," he said in broken human language. "I am valuable. I have information. I can help you." Daniel raised his weapon. His finger touched the trigger. Every part of him wanted to pull it. Every part of him wanted to watch this monster die. But he did not fire. Instead, he took a deep breath and lowered his weapon. "Get up," he said. The Vethrak commander stared at him in confusion. "You are not going to kill me?" "No," Daniel replied. "That would be too easy. Too quick." He gestured for two of his soldiers to grab the prisoner. "You will stand trial for your crimes. Not a Vethrak trial, where the strong do whatever they want. A human trial, with evidence and witnesses and judges. You will answer for what you did to those women." The commander was dragged to his feet. He still looked confused. "When you are found guilty," Daniel continued, "you will spend the rest of your life in a cell. You will have plenty of time to think about what you did. Every day, for the rest of your existence, you will remember the Mercy's Light. You will remember the screaming. And you will know that the species you thought was weak has defeated you completely." Daniel leaned close to the Vethrak's face. "That is human justice. We do not become monsters to fight monsters. We stay true to our principles, even when it is hard. Even when every part of us wants revenge." He stepped back. "Take him away." The campaign continued for 3 years after that. Human forces pushed deep into Vethrak territory. They captured world after world. They destroyed military bases and weapons factories. They freed the species that the Vethrak had conquered and enslaved. But they did not commit atrocities. They did not target civilians. They did not torture prisoners. Every captured Vethrak was treated according to the rules of the Orion Accords, the same accords that the Dominion had violated. This was, perhaps, the most devastating weapon of all. Word spread through Vethrak space that humans treated prisoners fairly, that surrendering to humans meant food, medical care, and safety. Vethrak soldiers began giving up instead of fighting to the death. Entire units laid down their weapons when they saw human forces approaching. The conquered species under Vethrak rule heard these stories too. They rose up in rebellion, knowing that humans would treat them as equals, not as slaves. The Dominion's empire began to crack and crumble from within. Sergeant Daniel Torres participated in the liberation of 12 worlds during the campaign. On each one, he carried the chip with the names and faces of the Mercy's Light victims. At every victory ceremony, he read their names aloud. "We remember you," he would say. "We fight for you. We will never rest until justice is done." The Vethrak had thought that killing those women would break human spirit. Instead, it had united humanity like nothing else in history. It had given them a purpose, a cause, a reason to fight with everything they had. And now the Vethrak were learning the price of their mistake. Commander Nathan Cole, now promoted to admiral, stood on the bridge of the Retribution as it orbited yet another liberated world. He looked at the photograph of his mother. "We are almost there, Mom," he said quietly. "Soon it will be over. Soon you can rest." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for the next battle. The Vethrak capital was only a few months away. And when humans reached it, the war would finally end, one way or another. The war ended on a bright morning that Daniel Torres would remember for the rest of his life. He stood in the Grand Plaza of Veth Prime, the capital world of the Vethrak Dominion. The alien city surrounded him with tall buildings and strange architecture. 3 years ago, no human could have imagined standing here. Now thousands of human soldiers filled the plaza, along with representatives from dozens of species that had been freed from Vethrak rule. The sky above was filled with human warships. They floated silently, a reminder of the power that had brought the Dominion to its knees. Admiral Catherine Ross stood at a podium in the center of the plaza. Behind her, a massive screen showed the document that would end the war. It was called the Treaty of Veth. Vethrak leaders were signing it one by one, their clawed hands shaking as they wrote their names. The treaty dissolved the Vethrak Dominion forever. It took away their military forces. It gave freedom to all the species they had enslaved. It created a new government that would be watched by the other races of the galaxy. The Vethrak had lost everything. Catherine waited until the last signature was complete. Then she turned to face the assembled crowds. "Today marks the end of a war that cost billions of lives," she said. Her voice was calm but strong. "Today, we achieve victory. But I want to speak about what this victory means." The crowd fell silent. Every eye was on her. When the Vethrak murdered our people aboard the Mercy's Light, they believed they were showing strength. They believed that cruelty was power. They believed that causing terror would break our will to fight. She paused. They were wrong. What they showed was not strength. It was weakness. The weakness of a civilization that cannot think of any solution except violence. The weakness of leaders who confuse fear with respect. The weakness of a species that never learned the most important truth about humanity. Her voice rose. "We are most dangerous when we are united, and nothing unites us like injustice." The crowd responded with cheering that echoed off the buildings. But our answer to their evil was not to become evil ourselves, Catherine continued. We did not burn their cities. We did not murder their children. We did not torture their prisoners. We fought with every bit of strength we had, and we won. But we did not throw away our principles to do it. She gestured to the screen behind her. The officers responsible for the Mercy's Light massacre have been tried and convicted. They will spend the rest of their lives in prison, thinking about what they did. The Vethrak people will rebuild their society under rules that prevent them from ever starting another war. And the galaxy will know that humanity can be pushed, but never broken. Daniel felt tears running down his face. He was not ashamed of them. All around him, soldiers were crying too. Men and women who had fought through 3 years of war, who had lost friends and suffered wounds, were finally allowing themselves to feel something other than determination. Pete Adams stood beside him. The old soldier had served through the entire campaign. His metal leg had been upgraded twice as technology improved. But his eyes were the same as they had been on that escape pod years ago. Hard and cold and full of purpose. Now, for the first time since the massacre, those eyes softened. "We did it," Pete said quietly. "We kept our promise to them." Daniel nodded. He could not speak. His throat was too tight with emotion. The ceremony continued with a moment of silence for all the victims of the war. Then, one by one, survivors and family members came forward to light candles. Each small flame represented someone who had been lost. When it was Daniel's turn, he walked to the front of the plaza. Thousands of eyes watched him. He did not care. His attention was on the candle in his hands and the memories in his heart. He lit the flame with steady hands. "For Commander Bennett," he whispered. "For Dr. Cole, for every woman on the Mercy's Light, for every person who died in this war. We remember you. We honor you. Rest now. It is over." The candle's flame flickered in the morning breeze, but did not go out. That evening, Daniel sat alone on a balcony overlooking the conquered capital. The sun was setting, painting the alien sky in colors he had never seen before. Orange and purple and gold mixed together like paint on a canvas. He pulled out the chip he had carried for 3 years. The one with 87 names and 87 faces. He activated it one last time. The holographic images appeared before him. Young faces and old faces. Nurses and doctors and technicians. Women who had dedicated their lives to healing others. Women who had died simply because the Vethrak saw them as weak. Daniel spoke each name aloud. It took a long time. When he finished, he sat in silence for a while. "We were supposed to be the soft ones," he murmured. "The gentle ones. The ones who built hospital ships and signed peace treaties and believed that talking was better than fighting." He looked out at the city below. Vethrak civilians were moving through the streets, going about their lives under the watchful eyes of human peacekeepers. They were not being hurt or punished. They were simply being watched to make sure they never became a threat again. "You pushed us too far," Daniel continued. "You forgot that under our kindness, under our laws and our ideals, we are still the species that survived everything. The ice ages, the plagues, the wars, the disasters. We refused to die, no matter what the universe threw at us." He stood up and put the chip back in his pocket. The Vethrak thought they were sending a message. They were right, but it was not the message they wanted to send. He began walking back toward the human camp, where his brothers and sisters in arms were celebrating. The message was simple. You can challenge humanity. You can test us. You can even hurt us badly. But if you cross certain lines, if you do things that no civilized species should ever do, you will face results that you cannot imagine. He paused at the edge of the balcony and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the homeworld of his species. Somewhere out there were the graves of the Mercy's Light victims, finally at peace. We are humanity. We remember everything. And we never, ever forget. He walked into the celebration. His fellow soldiers greeted him with cheers and embraces. Someone handed him a drink. Someone else started telling a joke about a Vethrak commander who had surrendered by accident. Daniel laughed with them. He drank with them. He celebrated with them. But in his pocket, the chip with 87 names rested close to his heart. He would carry it for the rest of his life. A reminder of why he had fought. A reminder of what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. And a reminder that some prices, once paid, can never be forgotten. The war was over. The Vethrak Dominion was no more. Humanity had proven itself to be exactly what its enemies had feared, a species that combined compassion with steel, mercy with strength, and forgiveness with an absolute refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again, and somewhere, in whatever place souls go when they leave their bodies, 87 women smiled down at the species they had died for. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. The end.